Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a Heian courtyard at dusk, where the air smells faintly of cedar wood and freshly raked gravel, and the gates creak just enough to make you wonder if someone's hiding behind them. Lanterns made of pale, oiled paper flicker like sleepy fireflies, each one swaying in the late summer breeze. You can almost hear the silk sleeves brushing along the garden path. Of course, if you were an uninvited guest in this particular century, you probably wouldn't survive the night. Heian security didn't exactly rely on a friendly, "Who's there?" So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step past the heavy wooden gate, its hinges sighing in protest. The gravel under your feet crunches in a deliberate rhythm, slow enough not to draw too much attention, but steady enough to remind you that you belong here. Above you, the paper lanterns sway from iron hooks, their frames casting delicate spiderweb shadows on the garden wall. The faint scent of cedar smoke lingers from an earlier incense offering. It curls upward, vanishing into the indigo sky. The lanterns are hand-painted, some with chrysanthemums, others with cranes mid-flight, wings stretched as if they'll glide right off the paper if you blink. Historians still argue whether lantern painting in the Heian-era was considered fine art or just nice evening decor. Either way, in this courtyard, they're glowing like tiny moons. The walls are smooth plaster, almost too perfect, as though someone has wiped away every sign of weather and time. There's no wind strong enough to disrupt the warm pools of light. Yet the occasional moth flutters through, landing against the paper, as if testing the strength of this fragile barrier between darkness and glow. A pair of servants in plain indigo robes moves silently along the path, carrying long bamboo poles topped with fresh candles. One replaces a fading flame with the precision of a priest lighting a shrine lamp. You're close enough to hear the gentle tap of bamboo against the lantern frame. One servant stifles a cough. It's a small sound, but in this world of cultivated quiet, it echoes like a dropped pebble in a still pond. The path curves past a neatly trimmed hedge, with a faint trickle of water tells you there's a pond nearby. The stones beneath your feet are damp from an earlier watering, the air carrying that earthy scent of wet rock. Somewhere in the distance, a night bird calls, 3 short notes, then silence, as if it, too, is respecting the mood. You pause to take in the main house ahead, a low, wide structure with sliding screens that catch the lantern light like parchment. The roof tiles gleam faintly, still holding on to the last warmth of the day. A samurai, perhaps in his late 20s, stands by the entrance, not in full armor, but wearing a patterned kimono that hints at status. His hand rests loosely on the hilt of his short sword, not as a threat, more like a habit. You meet eyes for a moment, and in that slow nod he gives, you feel both welcome and evaluated. Somewhere deeper in the compound, someone is playing a flute. The melody is thin and winding, rising like incense smoke before vanishing in the night air. The notes make you think of narrow mountain paths, rain on pine needles, and cups of tea so hot you have to sip them through pursed lips. You wonder if the flute player knows you're listening. The gravel gives way to flat stepping stones, set into soft moss. Each step releases the cool, green scent into the air. The lanterns here are fewer, placed farther apart, as though you're being encouraged to slow down, to let your eyes adjust to the shadows. On the left, a small shrine sits in a corner, sheltered by a camellia bush. A single lantern glows beside it, and offerings of rice and sake wait in small, shallow bowls. One bowl also contains, well, it looks suspiciously like a persimmon. You wonder whether that's a symbolic gesture or just the shrine keeper's snack. The air cools further as you pass under a tall gate, its beams painted in vermilion, though the color is muted under night's embrace. Though it smells faintly of oil and sun, even though the sun is long gone. Here, the light from the lanterns makes the shadows seem alive. They stretch and sway across the path like slow-moving silk. You pass a couple walking toward the main hall, their heads inclined toward each other in quiet conversation. The woman's sleeves trail almost to the ground, embroidered with pale blossoms that catch the light when she turns. The man carries a small, lidded box, perhaps a gift, perhaps something more political. In the Heian period, gifts could mean alliances, debts, or dinner invitations, sometimes all three. Up ahead, you can see a larger open space, where the glow intensifies. The lanterns are hung in a circle, enclosing a gravel courtyard. In the center, a wide brazier burns with a steady flame, sending waves of warmth into the cooling night. People gather here in clusters, speaking in low tones, sipping tea from shallow bowls. The tea is not the frothy matcha you might know. It's a simpler, earlier form, closer to steeped leaves with a delicate bitterness that lingers on the tongue. A server offers you a cup. The steam rises, carrying notes of roasted barley and something faintly sweet, like dried plum. You sip, and the taste grounds you, pulling you into this moment. The lanterns sway overhead, casting moving halos on the gravel. For a while, you stand there, the warmth of the tea in your hands, the hum of quiet voices around you, and the knowledge that in this courtyard, time has loosened its grip. You slip out of the lantern circle and follow a side path toward the heart of Kyoto's night market. The transition is almost theatrical. One moment you're in the carefully choreographed hush of a noble's courtyard. The next you're stepping into a narrow street alive with the scent of grilled river fish, sweet soy glaze, and just a hint of wood smoke. Here, the lanterns are less refined. Red and white paper shades hung at mismatched heights, painted with bold characters that advertise eel skewers, rice cakes, or a particularly confident claim of the best sake in the district. The cobblestones are uneven under your feet, and you find yourself weaving between stalls set so close together you could reach out and touch both sides at once. Merchants call in low but persuasive voices. They don't shout because in this part of town, you don't have to. If someone smells freshly grilled au fish on the breeze, they're going to stop. And if they don't, well, there's always the sound of sizzling fat to lure them in. A boy no older than 12 squats by a brazier, turning skewers with the precision of a jeweler setting stones. The glaze bubbles just enough to caramelize at the edges. He offers you one with a grin. 3 coins. Fair price. You take a bite, and the heat nearly burns your tongue, but the sweet salty crunch makes you forget entirely that you were here for tea, not street food. Somewhere, a cat watches you from the shadows with the kind of patient judgment only cats can manage. Historians still argue whether these night markets were officially sanctioned or simply tolerated, because no one in power wanted to go to bed hungry. Either way, they're thriving tonight. You pass a stall selling paper charms to ward off illness, each one stamped with the mark of a local shrine. Another offers small glass bottles filled with what the vendor swears is moonlight water, collected on the full moon from the Kamo River. You don't buy it, figuratively or literally, but you admire the marketing. A woman in a deep indigo kimono waves you over to her stall, where she's selling roasted chestnuts. The smell alone could convince a stone statue to hand over a coin. She cracks one open to reveal the golden interior, still steaming. You eat it slowly, savoring the sweet, nutty warmth against the cooler night air. Behind you, 2 merchants are haggling over a shipment of dried seaweed. Voices low but sharp, each refusing to give ground. You're not sure if this is business, theater, or both. Past the food stalls, the market changes character. Now there are cloth sellers, their bolts of silk and cotton unrolling like ribbons in the lantern light. You run your hand over a piece of pale pink silk, so smooth it feels like water trying to escape your fingers. The seller watches you closely, too closely. You withdraw your hand, and they smile in that way that means come back with coin. There's music too, not the refined koto you heard in the courtyard, but a quicker, brighter shamisen, played by a man perched on an overturned bucket. His voice is rough, telling a story you catch only in fragments, something about a fox spirit who owes someone money. People toss coins into his bowl, and he nods without breaking the rhythm. At the far end of the market, a small group has gathered around a storyteller. She's older, with silver hair coiled at the nape of her neck, her voice carrying just enough to draw on passers-by. She speaks of the great fire that once swept through Kyoto, not the scary parts, but the way neighbors helped each other rebuild, the shared rice porridge, the song sung to keep spirits up. You linger until the crowd shifts, and the story fades into the general murmur of the night. The smell of incense drifts from a nearby alley, and you follow it to find a small Buddhist altar tucked between two stalls. A single candle flickers beside a brass bell, and someone has left an offering of pickled radish. Modest, but genuine. You bow without thinking, the gesture automatic in this space where the sacred and the everyday blur together. A sudden gust of wind rattles the paper lanterns, sending shadows dancing over the market stalls. Somewhere above, the moon peaks between two rooftops, washing the street in a silver glaze that softens every edge. You realize you've been here for longer than you planned, your sleeves carrying the scent of grilled fish and sweet chestnuts. Still, the pull of the tea house is ahead, and the thought of warm bowls and quieter company tugs you onward. You step back into a narrower lane, where the market stalls thin out and the voices fade. Behind you, the hum of the night market continues, a constant pulse in the city's veins. Ahead, you can see the glow of a different kind of lantern, steady, calm, and waiting. The lane narrows until you're walking single file, though the only one ahead of you is a stray dog who clearly knows the way better than you do. The lantern glow ahead steadies into a warm, golden halo, and soon the low, dark eaves of the tea house come into view. Its wooden facade is plain, but not without charm, the kind of simplicity that speaks of deliberate taste rather than neglect. A fabric Norin curtain hangs over the doorway, dyed with a pale brushwork of mountains and a single crane mid-flight. You pause at the threshold, where the worn stone step has been polished smooth by countless feet. The air here smells of roasted tea leaves, earthy, slightly sweet, with a faint mineral edge that makes you think of distant mountain springs. You slip off your sandals, placing them neatly beside the others. The floorboards under your socks are cool and slightly uneven, as though they've memorized the shape of each guest's gait. Inside, the light is softer still. Oil lamps set in wooden frames throw gentle halos against walls of pale plaster. The ceiling beams are dark from age and smoke, their weight making the room feel like a shelter from anything the world might be plotting outside. At the far end, behind a low counter, the tea master works in silence. His robe is plain gray, sleeves rolled to the elbow. His hands move with unhurried precision as he scoops dark leaves from a small clay jar, measuring by instinct rather than instrument. Historians still argue whether tea houses of this period were more about the beverage or the unspoken negotiations that often brewed alongside it. Tonight, at least for you, it's about the drink. The tea master drops the leaves into a kettle of simmering water. The steam rises in ghostly ribbons, carrying with it the promise of warmth and a slight bitterness that will cling to your tongue in the most comforting way. A server glides over with a shallow ceramic bowl, placing it before you with both hands. The glaze is a muted green, flecked with darker spots, the kind of irregular beauty that makes the bowl feel alive. You lift it, inhaling before you sip. The flavor is layered, roasted barley warmth at first, then a grassy brightness, and finally a faintly sweet aftertaste that lingers like the last notes of a lullaby. At a nearby table, two merchants lean close over their tea, speaking in a half-whisper that means they don't want to be overheard, but also don't mind being noticed. Snatches of words float over: rice shipments, coin rates, the reliability of a certain sea captain. One of them laughs softly at something the other says, but the sound is as contained as everything else here. In the corner, a small group sits cross-legged on tatama mats, a board game laid out between them. Flat, round stones are arranged in an intricate pattern that you can't quite decipher. A young man hesitates before placing his next piece, and his opponent smiles as though the game has already been won. It's not about speed. It's about the pleasure of a move made with care. The tea master pours you a second cup without asking. The leaves have softened in the pot, deepening the flavor. You take smaller sips this time, letting the heat seep into your hands through the bowl. The low hum of conversation around you is steady, but quiet, the sort of sound that blurs into background warmth. From somewhere deeper in the building, you hear a soft clink of porcelain, someone preparing more tea, or perhaps a careful rearranging of cups just for the satisfaction of order. The dog who led you here has found a spot by the wall, curled up with the resigned dignity of a regular who knows they won't be served but stays for the atmosphere. The curtain over the doorway stirs as another guest enters, shaking the cool night air from his sleeves. He greets the tea master with a bow and receives a nod in return. No words needed. In a place like this, silence is its own kind of language, as layered and deliberate as any poem. You finish your second bowl and set it down gently, the faint click against the table sounding louder than you expected. The tea master glances your way, just briefly, as though weighing whether to offer you something else. Instead, he returns to his slow, steady work, refilling kettles, wiping the counter, tending to the heart of this place. You rise, bow slightly, and step back toward the curtain. The air outside feels cooler now, as though the tea house was holding its own season inside. The lantern on the post sways gently in the breeze, guiding you toward the garden you glimpsed earlier. The night is far from over, and somewhere beyond the hedge, the soft pluck of koto strings is waiting. You follow the faint trail of music through a side gate, the sound of the koto drawing you toward the heart of the courtyard. The path winds between low hedges of boxwood, their clipped shapes casting rounded shadows in the lantern light. A faint mist hangs over the garden pond, blurring the edges of the stepping stones, as though someone painted them with soft strokes and forgot to finish the outlines. The koto's strings hum in slow, deliberate notes, each one stretching into the air before fading into silence. You find the musician seated on a raised wooden platform that overlooks the koi pond. Her robe is a deep plum, embroidered with golden chrysanthemums that catch the light whenever she shifts. Long, black hair falls like ink over her shoulder, and her fingers move with a grace that feels almost rehearsed for the moon's benefit. The koi below are restless tonight, their tails flicking just enough to disturb the mirrored surface. The ripples turn the lantern reflections into golden ribbons, breaking and reforming with each movement. You kneel near the pond's edge, feeling the damp coolness of the stones beneath your knees. Historians still argue whether koto performances in the Heian period were formal court events or casual evening diversions. Judging by the way the listeners here lounge against posts or sit with legs dangling over the deck, tonight is firmly in the casual diversion category. A young couple shares a small dish of pickled plum, passing the fruit back and forth like it's a secret. An older man leans back with his eyes closed, tapping one finger against his knee in time with the music. A servant passes by with a tray of small, steaming cups. The aroma is stronger than the tea from earlier, more toasted, almost smoky. You accept one, cradling it in your palms as the warmth seeps through your fingers. The liquid is earthy and deep, a flavor that lingers long after you swallow. A moth drifts into the circle of lantern light, circling lazily before settling on the musician's sleeve. She doesn't pause or brush it away. If anything, her smile deepens, as though she's been joined by an old friend. The song changes, the tempo quickening slightly, and a few people exchange amused glances. It's not exactly a dance tune, but it carries a playfulness you didn't expect. You wonder if this is her way of acknowledging the late hour, coaxing her audience to stay awake a little longer. Somewhere behind you, someone chuckles quietly. Maybe they caught the same joke. The pond's surface shivers again as a koi breaches, mouth opening to take a fallen plum blossom. The petals drift in lazy spirals until they meet the water, dissolving into faint threads of pink. The air smells faintly of pine from a nearby tree, mingling with the tea's aroma in a way that makes the whole scene feel like it's been steeping for centuries. A breeze lifts the edge of your sleeve, carrying with it a few strands of the musician's melody. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sound wash over you. There's no rush here, no sense that the night is slipping away, just the steady flow of notes, the soft splash of fish, and the murmured voices of those sharing the same quiet space. When the piece ends, the listeners murmur polite appreciation rather than breaking the mood with applause. The musician nods once, sets her koto aside, and takes a sip from her own cup of tea. Lantern light glints off the rim, catching on a faint crack in the glaze, a reminder that even in a place devoted to beauty, imperfection has its own seat at the table. You linger for another moment, watching the ripples fade into stillness. Beyond the deck, a narrow path winds deeper into the garden, its edges lined with maple trees. The breeze shakes loose a few leaves, sending them tumbling toward the ground in slow, spiraling arcs. The koto player resumes her music as you rise, the notes following you like a gentle farewell. You follow the maple-lined path, the red and gold leaves crunching softly under your steps until the stones appear again, smooth and cool beneath your feet. The lanterns here burn lower, their light just enough to outline the silhouettes of figures ahead. As you draw closer, you see them, samurai, not in the rigid, ceremonial armor of formal display, but in loose robes and half-unfastened sashes, their hair tied back with the casualness of men off duty. They sit around a low table beneath a willow tree, its branches swaying like green curtains in the breeze. Bowls of tea steam gently in the lantern light, accompanied by small dishes of salted river fish and pickled vegetables. One samurai leans back, resting his elbow on a root that juts up through the earth. Another taps his cup in time with the story being told. Something about a night patrol that ended with more frogs and a helmet than honor in a report. The others laugh, the sound warm and contained, a shared moment rather than a boast. Historians still argue whether samurai social gatherings like these were truly informal or subtly political. Opportunities to build alliances under the guise of friendship. Watching them now, you believe either. A quiet camaraderie hums beneath their conversation, but so does a gentle gauging of who speaks when and who chooses to listen. One of them notices you and gestures toward an empty cushion. You settle onto it, feeling the rough weave of the fabric under your palms. Someone pours you a bowl of tea without asking, the liquid swirling in the cup before it stills. It's slightly cooler than before, a sign that the night is wearing on, but the flavor is deeper, almost woody. A younger samurai, perhaps barely past his teenage years, leans forward to tell a tale of his first duel. He speaks with the earnestness of someone who knows the story is more amusing than impressive. He describes standing in the morning mist, so nervous he nearly bowed twice. The duel ended in 3 clumsy strikes and a draw, though he claims victory on the grounds that his opponent tripped over his own scabbard. Laughter follows, but it's the kind that wraps around you, not sharp or cutting. The willow branches sway again, brushing the edge of the table. A few leaves drop into the tea bowls, and no one bothers to remove them. It's almost as if the leaves are welcome guests, invited to share in the warmth. A samurai across from you pulls a small cloth pouch from his sleeve and spills its contents onto the table. Tiny wooden figures painted with exaggerated expressions. They're no taller than a thumb, but each one has a personality in its painted eyes. He arranges them into a line, explaining that they're part of a game meant to test a warrior's patience and accuracy. You watch as he flicks one figure toward another, the tiny clack of wood on wood drawing nods of approval. In the background, a lone cricket begins its evening song, its rhythm filling the space between sentences. No one hurries here. Each story is told as though it has all the time in the world. Each sip of tea taken with the deliberate care of people who measure life in moments rather than hours. The night air has cooled enough that your breath joins the faint steam from your cup. A brazier at the center of the table glows softly, the charcoal shifting with occasional pops. The scent is faintly sweet, a mix of pine and something herbal. You lean back slightly, letting the warmth reach your face while your shoulders settle into the easy pace of the gathering. When you finally stand to leave, one of the older samurai gives you a brief nod. Not an invitation to return, but an acknowledgement that you've been part of this small, shared chapter. You step away from the willow's shelter, back toward the main garden path, carrying with you the murmur of voices and the echo of laughter that will fade slowly, like the aftertaste of well-brewed tea. The path leads you away from the willow's shade and back toward the main compound, where the air smells faintly of cedar and rain-soaked earth. The stone lanterns stand in pairs now, their glow a little brighter, as if guiding you toward something more formal. Beyond them, a large gate rises, its wooden beams dark with age, capped with tiles that gleam under the moonlight. 2 attendants bow silently as you approach, sliding the gate open with a slow, deliberate motion. The creak of the wood is deep and resonant, like the opening note of a song you've been hearing all along, but only now notice. Inside is a courtyard unlike the quiet garden you've just left. Here, the ground is packed dirt, swept so clean you can see the faint marks of a broom in perfect arcs. Across the courtyard sits the main hall. Its sliding doors are thrown open to reveal an interior lit entirely by paper lanterns. Their light is softer than firelight, diffused and gentle, making every shadow appear blurred at the edges. You can hear the low hum of conversation from within, measured, calm, and rhythmic, as though the speakers are more concerned with pacing their thoughts than with making a point. As you cross the courtyard, your feet make almost no sound. The air feels heavier here, not with tension, but with the presence of history. It's as though every meeting in this place has left a faint echo, layering the silence with stories you cannot hear but can somehow feel. A servant appears at your side without a word, offering a folded cloth. When you accept it, the faint scent of camphor rises from its fibers, a subtle sign that everything in this place is cared for meticulously. You wipe your hands and are led toward the hall's entrance, where you bow before stepping inside. The room is long and low, with tatami mats in precise rows. At the far end, a few senior samurai sit facing one another, their posture perfectly upright. Between them rests a low lacquered table holding scrolls, inkstones, and a single, elegant tea set. The steam from the pot curls upward in slow spirals, as if reluctant to rise. One of the men gestures for you to sit, and you lower yourself to the mat. The scent here is a mixture of aged wood, tatami, and faint incense. Something floral but not sweet, almost like a memory of a garden. A small ceramic cup is placed in front of you, and when you take a sip, the tea is stronger, more astringent than before. This is no casual brew. It has the taste of formality and discipline. They begin to speak, not to you directly at first, but to one another. The conversation drifts between topics: a recent harvest, the appointment of a new retainer, the repairs needed on a bridge upriver. None of it is urgent, yet everything feels deliberate. You realize that in this place, decisions are not made in haste. Time itself seems to slow until each pause between words feels like part of the conversation. When one of the senior samurai finally turns to you, it is with the ease of someone who has already considered what to say long before speaking. He asks where your journey began. You answer, and though the details are brief, you see the interest in his eyes, not in your destination, but in the manner of your travel, the people you met, the weather you endured. To them, the story lies in the path, not the arrival. The night wears on with no sign of weariness among them. You find yourself matching their rhythm, letting silences stretch without the urge to fill them. Outside, the wind stirs the paper lanterns, casting soft waves of shadow that ripple across the tatami like water. When you finally take your leave, a servant hands you a folded slip of paper. You tuck it away without reading it, sensing it is not meant to be opened until the right moment. Stepping out into the cool night again, you glance back at the hall. The lanterns glow steadily, as though the conversation within will continue long after you've gone, unhurried and unending. You follow the path beyond the courtyard, where the night air feels lighter, carrying the distant scent of pine smoke. Somewhere ahead, the faint sound of running water calls you onward. The sound of water grows louder as you follow the winding path, soft splashes and gentle trickles guiding your steps through the garden's shaded corridors. Moss cushions the stones beneath your feet, cool and velvety in the night air. Lanterns hang here less frequently, their light sparse, lending the space a mysterious hush, like a secret waiting to be discovered. You come upon a small, tucked-away kitchen area where cooks work quietly behind sliding wooden panels. The scent of roasted chestnuts mingles with the sharp tang of pickled plums and the rich aroma of freshly ground matcha. A young apprentice grinds tea leaves in a stone mill, the steady circular motion creating a soft rhythm that blends seamlessly with the night sounds. Historians still argue whether the role of kitchen servants in Heian households was purely functional, or whether they subtly influenced court culture through the foods and rituals they prepared. Here, in this small, flickering room, the importance of their work feels tangible. You watch as a cook carefully slices thin pieces of salted fish, arranging them with precision on a lacquered tray. Nearby, another stirs a simmering pot of miso soup, steam curling up in lazy tendrils. The kitchen's quiet efficiency contrasts sharply with the vibrant energy of the market you passed earlier. A servant pauses to offer you a small bowl filled with sweetened chestnut paste. You take a spoonful, the creamy texture melting smoothly on your tongue. Its gentle sweetness, a comforting counterpoint to the tea's slight bitterness. Behind you, a faint clatter of wooden utensils signals the preparation of another dish, and the scent of fresh bamboo shoots briefly fills the air. In a corner, a delicate porcelain cup is carefully set aside after being rinsed with hot water, its thin walls glowing faintly in the dim light. You wonder about the hands that crafted it centuries ago, each one shaping clay with patience and care, mindful of beauty in everyday objects. The kitchen's walls are paper thin, and you can hear muffled laughter from the hall beyond, a reminder that while the cooks labor in shadows, their efforts fuel the lively gatherings you've already witnessed. A small wooden bell rings softly, signaling a change in shift or perhaps the approach of a new guest. The cooks exchange a few words, their voices low and respectful, then return to their tasks with quiet focus. As you step away from the kitchen, the night air feels cooler, scented now with pine and earth. The garden path leads you back into the open, where maple leaves flutter gently overhead and the faint murmur of a distant stream soothes your senses. You pause for a moment to breathe in the peacefulness, feeling the lingering warmth of the hearth and the subtle magic of this place settling around you like a soft blanket. You step deeper into the garden, drawn toward a quiet gathering beneath a broad maple tree whose leaves catch the silver light of the rising moon. The air is cool and fragrant with the subtle scent of damp earth and flowering azaleas. Around you, guests settle onto woven mats, their movements slow and deliberate as they prepare for the evening's moon viewing ceremony. The lanterns here are hung higher, their soft glow mingling with the moonlight to create a pale tapestry of light and shadow. The branches above rustle gently, shedding a few golden leaves that drift like confetti into the laps of those seated below. Someone offers you a cup of warm tea, its surface reflecting the silvery glow, a tiny moon within your hands. Historians still argue whether moon viewing in Heian, Japan, was primarily a poetic ritual or a subtle social event meant to solidify courtly bonds. Either way, the scene before you feels suffused with a quiet reverence. You lean back, feeling the smooth texture of the tatami beneath you, and listen as a poet begins to recite verses inspired by the moon's cold light. The words swirl through the air like the mist hovering over the pond, conjuring images of floating cranes, distant mountains, and the gentle passing of seasons. Nearby, a servant arranges small plates of pickled plums and roasted chestnuts, their warm colors a delicate contrast against the cool blues and silvers of the night. The taste of the plums is tart and sweet, awakening your senses just enough to savor the moment without breaking its stillness. A soft breeze stirs the maple leaves again, sending a shower of amber petals that settle on shoulders and laps alike. Someone laughs quietly as a leaf lands on their nose, and the sound blends seamlessly with the rustle of branches and the slow, steady rhythm of sips taken from tea bowls. Above, the moon seems impossibly bright, its light spilling over the garden like liquid silver. You find your gaze drifting upward, following its path as it slips behind a thin veil of clouds, softening the edges of the night. A gentle conversation begins to hum around you, voices low and melodic as listeners share their own interpretations of the poems. The talk drifts to stories of past moon-viewing nights, some filled with joy, others touched with the bittersweet melancholy of fleeting beauty. The night stretches ahead, unhurried and patient, inviting you to lose yourself in the shared experience of light, leaf, and verse. In this moment, time seems to fold inward, the present merging with memory and dream. As the poem ends, a hush falls over the group. Lanterns flicker in response to a passing breeze, and the world feels suspended, balanced delicately between shadow and glow. You sip your tea once more, tasting the faint sweetness of roasted barley and plum, and settle into the peaceful rhythm of this moonlit night. The garden path leads you onward, weaving through clusters of bamboo that sway softly in the gentle night breeze. The tall stalks lean and creak ever so slightly, creating a subtle symphony that harmonizes with the distant rustle of maple leaves. You pause to inhale deeply, the scent of damp wood and fresh green shoots grounding you in the quiet moment. Ahead, a small wooden pavilion comes into view, its low roof supported by polished cedar pillars. The structure is simple yet elegant, designed for contemplation and solitude. You step inside, feeling the smoothness of the tatami beneath your feet and the coolness of the shaded space, contrasting with the warmer air outside. On the pavilion's edge sits a solitary figure, a monk wrapped in faded robes, his face serene as he gently strokes the strings of a shakuhachi flute. The notes are soft, breathy, and haunting, carrying through the night like whispered prayers. You settle nearby, allowing the music to wash over you, its ebb and flow blending with the sounds of the garden. Historians still debate the extent to which shakuhachi music was used for meditation versus entertainment during the Heian period. But tonight, in this tranquil moment, it feels like both. The flute's voice speaks of quiet reflection, the passage of seasons, and the unseen currents that shape all things. A pair of fireflies drift lazily past the pavilion, their tiny lights blinking like distant stars brought down to earth. You watch as they hover briefly near a cluster of wildflowers, then vanish into the shadows. The air grows cooler, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and distant smoke. The monk finishes his piece with a gentle breath, letting the final note linger in the silence. He bows his head in acknowledgement and motions for you to join him in a silent moment of gratitude. You close your eyes, feeling the stillness settle within you like a gentle tide. When you open them, the monk is gone, leaving only the faint trace of incense and the soft rustle of bamboo leaves. The moon has climbed higher, its light spilling silver across the garden floor, illuminating the path that leads you back toward the heart of the compound. As you rise to leave, you catch a glimpse of a small carved statue nestled among the stones, a fox with knowing eyes, guardian of secrets and stories whispered in the dark. You smile, sensing that some mysteries are meant to be felt rather than solved. The night continues around you, a delicate balance of sound and silence, light and shadow, invitation and retreat. With each step, you move deeper into the gentle embrace of medieval Japan's evening calm. You continue along the winding garden path, now lined with soft moss that cushions your steps and muffles your footsteps. The air is cooler here, touched with a crispness that hints at the approaching autumn. Above, the maple leaves shimmer faintly in the lantern glow, their colors deepening into rich reds and burnt oranges as they prepare for their seasonal farewell. A subtle rustling draws your attention to a small group gathered near a stone water basin, a tsukubai, used for ritual purification. The basin's surface is perfectly still, reflecting the flickering lanterns and the silhouettes of those around it. One by one, guests approach to dip their hands and rinse their mouths. The act is much about mindfulness as cleanliness. You join in, the cool water refreshing and grounding. The simple ritual feels like a quiet reminder that even in moments of leisure, mindfulness threads through every action. Historians still discuss how much these purification practices were rooted in Shinto tradition versus the later influences of Zen Buddhism during the Heian period. Either way, they shaped not just ceremonies but everyday manners and etiquette, creating a rhythm that echoed through the halls and gardens. Nearby, a servant carefully arranges a low table with delicate sweets, mochi glazed with kanako, and small squares of translucent yokan. The treats are understated in sweetness, designed to complement the bitter tea served alongside them rather than overpower it. As you sit to partake, the conversation around you turns to tales of autumn festivals, celebrations of harvest, moonlight, and the fleeting beauty of changing leaves. Someone recounts the legend of a fox spirit who once helped a village avoid famine by guiding them to hidden rice fields, a story told with gentle humor and a twinkle in the teller's eye. The scent of roasted chestnuts drifts in from a nearby brazier, mingling with the aroma of pine and crisp evening air. You savor each bite of the sweet mochi, feeling the textures melt slowly, a tactile pleasure that matches the soft voices and rustling leaves. Above, a gentle wind shakes the branches, sending a shower of crimson leaves that drift slowly to the ground, carpeting the path like a patchwork quilt. The lanterns flicker in response, their light dancing across the faces of the guests, capturing moments of shared warmth and quiet joy. You lean back, letting the cool night air brush against your skin, carrying with it the subtle chorus of cicadas preparing for their final song of the season. The world feels suspended in a delicate balance between light and shadow, sound and silence, presence and memory. As the evening deepens, the tea bowls empty one by one, leaving behind the faint aroma of roasted barley and toasted leaves. You rise, feeling a calm satisfaction settle over you, the soft echo of laughter and whispered stories lingering like a gentle lullaby. The path ahead beckons, promising new moments of stillness and gentle discovery as the night unfolds. You step lightly onto the next section of the garden path, where the terrain slopes gently upward. The moss-covered stones give way to a gravel walk, meticulously raked in swirling patterns that mimic flowing water. The soft crunch beneath your feet adds a subtle rhythm to the stillness of the night. Lanterns here hang from slender bamboo poles, their warm glow casting elongated shadows that play across the faces of statues and carefully pruned bonsai trees. The air holds a faint scent of sweet incense mingled with the freshness of cedar. Ahead, a small pavilion comes into view, its lattice windows open to reveal a quiet gathering of scholars and poets. They sit cross-legged on tatama mats, their voices low and measured as they compose verses inspired by the moonlit garden. Scrolls and brushes lie scattered around them, inkpots catching the lantern light like pools of liquid night. You settle among them, the delicate brush of silk against silk a soft accompaniment to the poetry that begins to weave itself through the air. One poet recites a verse that speaks of fleeting clouds drifting past the moon, a metaphor for impermanence that tugs gently at your thoughts. Historians still debate the extent to which Heian poetry was a tool of political expression versus a genuine artistic pursuit. Yet here, under the pale glow of lanterns, the lines seem to breathe with honest longing and quiet beauty. A scholar dips his brush into ink and pauses, the tip hovering over the paper as if weighing the perfect word. Nearby, another sips tea slowly, the bitter warmth grounding him in the moment. The interplay of creation and reflection fills the space with a serene energy. Outside, a soft breeze stirs, carrying the faint rustle of bamboo leaves and the distant call of a night bird. The gentle sounds weave through the verses, binding nature and art in an unspoken dialogue. As the poets continue, the garden seems to pulse with timelessness, each word a thread in a tapestry that connects past and present, self and world. You listen, feeling the quiet power of language wrap around you like a familiar shawl, comforting and profound. When the final verse lingers into silence, a collective breath is drawn, and the group settles into a peaceful stillness that carries you forward into the night's next chapter. The gravel path descends now, leading you toward a small wooden bridge arching gracefully over a narrow stream. The water below murmurs quietly, tracing a course through the garden shadows as if eager to share its secrets. You pause at the bridge's center, leaning against the smooth railing and watching the moonlight ripple across the surface. Lanterns on either side glow softly, their light flickering with the subtle breath of the evening breeze. Dragonflies dart near the water's edge, their delicate wings catching glimmers of silver before disappearing into the night. The scent of wet stones and flowering irises fills the air, grounding you in this peaceful moment. Historians still debate whether water features in Heian gardens were purely aesthetic or imbued with spiritual significance. Standing here, it feels as though the stream carries both beauty and quiet blessing, flowing steadily through time and memory. You step off the bridge and follow the stream's edge, where a small tea pavilion awaits. Its sliding doors are open, revealing a low wooden table set with elegant porcelain cups and a steaming pot. The host, an elderly woman in a soft indigo kimono, greets you with a gentle bow and gestures for you to sit. The tea she serves is fragrant and rich, with notes of roasted chestnut and a subtle smokiness that warms your chest. You savor each sip slowly, letting the warmth spread as the night deepens around you. Nearby, A group of guests share stories of ancient myths and folktales, tales of fox spirits, mountain gods, and clever tricksters whose antics bring laughter and lessons alike. Their voices are low and melodic, weaving a tapestry of sound that blends with the gentle trickle of the stream. A soft rustle in the bamboo behind the pavilion hints at the presence of a nightingale, whose song is brief but hauntingly beautiful. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the music and murmurs to lull you into a tranquil state. The moon slides behind a thin veil of cloud, softening the garden's contours and casting everything in a gentle gray wash. You feel the steady pulse of life here, the interplay of water, stone, story, and tea, a quiet harmony that invites you to linger longer. As you rise to leave, the host offers a small folded cloth embroidered with delicate sakura blossoms, a parting gift, simple but profound. You tuck it safely away, a tangible reminder of this serene interlude. The path ahead leads you onward, deeper into the heart of the garden's evening embrace, where new sights and sounds await. You continue along the softly lit path, leaving the tea pavilion behind as the garden widens into a small clearing surrounded by towering cedars. Their thick trunks rise straight and proud, ancient sentinels guarding the secrets of countless evenings like this one. The scent of pine needles mingles with the earthy aroma of damp moss carpeting the forest floor. Lanterns here are fewer, their light concentrated on a simple wooden stage set beneath the tallest cedar. A lone figure sits cross-legged, tuning a biwa lute with practiced fingers. The notes begin tentatively, then swell into a gentle melody that drifts through the trees like a whispered legend. You settle onto a nearby stone bench, the cool surface grounding you as the music weaves its quiet spell. The biwa's voice is both mournful and comforting, telling stories of distant seas, brave warriors, and lost loves, tales carried forward by generations. Historians still debate the extent to which biwa music was used for storytelling versus spiritual practice during the Heian-era. Tonight, its purpose feels clear: to connect past and present through sound and silence. The melody pauses, and the musician begins a low chant, words flowing softly like a river's current. You strain to catch fragments, mentions of a fox spirit, a forgotten temple, a night sky heavy with stars. The voices of the forest seem to join in, leaves rustling in harmony with the song. A sudden breeze stirs, carrying with it a scattering of pine needles that drift like confetti across the clearing. You watch as they settle around the stage, their descent slow and deliberate, mirroring the calm rhythm of the music. The musician finishes with a lingering note, letting it dissolve into the quiet before bowing deeply. Applause is sparse but sincere, a gentle recognition rather than a clamorous celebration. As you rise to leave, the forest feels alive with stories whispered among the trees. The path beckons, lined now with soft moss and flickering lanterns that guide you back toward the garden center. With each step, the night wraps you in its serene embrace, inviting you to carry the music's memory into the next chapter of this gentle journey through medieval Japan. The path narrows as you approach a cluster of small wooden buildings nestled among flowering plum trees. Their branches sway gently, releasing a soft shower of white petals that float lazily to the ground, carpeting the earth in delicate lace. The air here carries a faint, sweet fragrance, a tender reminder that spring's promise lingers even in the cool night. Lanterns hang from the eaves, casting warm pools of light onto sliding doors and wooden verandas. You hear the muted sound of laughter and soft conversation, the hum of voices blending with the distant chirping of crickets. Inside one building, a tea ceremony is underway. The room is simple and uncluttered, with tatama mats and a single ikebana arrangement, an artful display of branches and blossoms that embodies the fleeting beauty of nature. The host moves with slow, deliberate grace, performing each step of the ceremony as though it were a prayer. You are invited to sit, and a small bowl of matcha is placed before you. The tea is rich and velvety, its earthy bitterness balanced by the subtle sweetness of the powdered leaves. You take a sip, feeling warmth spread through your chest, and a quiet calm settle over your mind. Historians still discuss how much the tea ceremony evolved during the Heian period versus later cultural shifts. But here, in this tranquil room, it feels timeless, a meditation on presence, patience, and beauty. The conversation is soft and respectful, touching on poetry, the changing seasons, and the artistry found in everyday moments. Someone recites a verse about cherry blossoms falling like snow, and the room seems to breathe with the gentle sorrow of impermanence. Outside, the plum petals continue to drift, their descent slow and graceful. The lanterns flicker in the breeze, their light casting dancing shadows that echo the delicate movements within. You feel a profound connection to this moment, a blending of senses, history, and stillness that invites you to slow your breath and listen deeply. When the ceremony concludes, the host offers a bow and a serene smile. You rise with a quiet gratitude, stepping back into the night with a lingering taste of tea and the memory of blossoms in your heart. The garden path awaits, leading you toward the final moments of this peaceful evening journey. The garden narrows once more, winding gently toward a small, secluded pond nestled beneath a canopy of ancient pine trees. The surface of the water is perfectly still, mirroring the starry sky above with a clarity that seems almost unreal. Lanterns hang from low branches, their soft light casting a golden glow that ripples faintly as a gentle breeze stirs the pine needles. You settle onto a smooth stone at the water's edge, feeling the coolness seep through your robes and into your bones. Around you, the night is filled with subtle sounds, the distant call of a nightingale, the soft splash of a koi breaking the water surface, and the whisper of wind weaving through the pines. Historians still ponder whether ponds and Heian gardens were designed primarily for aesthetic pleasure or as symbolic gateways between worlds. Tonight, as you gaze into the water's depths, the boundary between reality and dream feels beautifully blurred. A small boat drifts silently across the pond, its lantern casting a warm circle of light. A figure sits within, rowing slowly with deliberate strokes that disturb neither water nor air. The scene is like a living painting, an invitation to stillness and contemplation. You close your eyes briefly, breathing in a mingled sense of pine, moss, and water. The world feels vast and intimate all at once, as if you are both part of the scene and its sole witness. As the boat fades into the distance, you allow the quiet to settle deep within you. The garden, the night, and your journey through this medieval world blend into a single, peaceful moment suspended in time. When you open your eyes again, the lanterns flicker softly, their light growing fainter as dawn's first pale hues begin to touch the horizon. The night stories drift gently into memory, leaving behind a calmness that will carry you through sleep and beyond. You rise slowly, feeling the weight of the evening's quiet magic still resting on your shoulders. The path leads you away from the pond and back toward the world you came from, softly, gently, as if not to disturb the fragile peace. Now, take a deep breath and let the serenity of this night settle over you like a comforting shroud. As the garden's lanterns dim and the first light of dawn stretches across the horizon, you find yourself wrapped in a quiet calm. The soft rustling of leaves, the gentle ripple of water, and the faint, lingering scents of pine and tea weave together into a delicate lullaby. Each moment of the evening, from the whispered melodies to the shared stories beneath moonlit trees, has settled into your mind like the slow unfurling of a flower. There is no hurry now, only the steady rhythm of breath and the soothing cadence of night. The ancient world you wandered through, with its lantern-lit paths and tranquil gardens, fades gently into the background of your thoughts, leaving a sense of peace that lingers long after your eyes close. Let the quiet embrace you, soft and unyielding, like the moss beneath your feet or the cool water by the pond. Imagine the lantern's warm glow gently fading into the morning light, carrying away any restless thoughts and inviting you into rest. As you drift deeper into sleep, may the stories, sights, and sounds of this gentle journey cradle you, guiding you through dreams as serene and timeless as the garden itself. Now, with a calm heart and a peaceful mind, Surrender to the night and let your spirit rest easy.